So, today we're diving into a pretty wild idea from a recent article. What if the best way to handle all that extra energy from wind and solar isn't to store it in a battery, but to turn it into something else entirely? In this quote right here, from the source, just perfectly frames the whole debate. The idea is really simple when you break it down. Instead of saving leftover green energy for later, what if you could turn it instantly into digital money?
And that, right there, is the million-dollar question we're going to explore. This sets up a direct showdown, a real head-to-head. The new kid on the block, Bitcoin mining, versus the established champ, battery storage.
So, to really get why anyone would even suggest this, we first have to understand the core problem. It's something the author calls the green energy paradox. Okay, so here's the deal. We all love renewables, right? But the sun isn't always shining and the wind isn't always blowing. That inconsistency, that volatility, creates a huge headache for our power grids. Sometimes you get way too much power, sometimes not enough, and the system just can't keep up. And that leads us to a word you absolutely need to know: curtailment. It's a fancy term for when grid operators are literally forced to tell a wind farm or a solar field to just stop. They shut them down to keep from overloading the grid. So let's be clear, this is perfectly good, clean energy that we are just throwing away on purpose. And look, this wasted energy problem isn't happening in a bubble. The source article points out that our energy markets are already getting squeezed from all sides. You've got geopolitical issues, inflation, you name it. It just makes finding a smarter solution that much more urgent. So, what's the current, mainstream answer to all this? Well, it's a technology we're all pretty familiar with. Yup, giant batteries. The idea makes sense. You just soak up all that extra solar and wind power, and then you push it back onto the grid when people need it. It's the go-to solution. But the article we're looking at today asks a really important question. Are batteries really the most efficient or profitable way to do this on a massive grid-wide scale?
Okay, now for the alternative. This is where it gets really interesting, because we're shifting from the idea of storing energy to the idea of transforming it.
And there it is, the author's central claim, laid out for everyone to see. Their argument is that Bitcoin mining isn't just another option, it's the best tool for this job because it gives you a much, much better return on your investment for every single watt of that extra power.
Okay, that is a huge claim, so you know we've got to do it. Let's get into the numbers. Let's see how the author actually backs this up.
First, let's just get the basic business models straight. With batteries, you're essentially playing the market. You store energy when it's cheap, you hope to sell it back when prices are high. With Bitcoin mining, there's no waiting game. You use that surplus power right now to earn Bitcoin and you generate revenue immediately. Okay, let's walk through the author's math for mining. They start with the hardware's energy consumption and something called hash price. Think of it as the daily market rate for mining power. They divide that out and get about 15 cents of gross revenue per kilowatt hour. Then you take out some standard fees, some site costs, and you land at a final net revenue of just over 14 cents. Now, let's look at the batteries. The really critical thing here is round-trip efficiency. You always lose a little bit of energy when you charge your battery and then discharge it. It's just physics. So, when you account for that loss, the numbers change. At a pretty typical market price, a battery nets you about 3.4 cents per kilowatt hour. And even if you get lucky and sell at a peak price, you're still only at 6 cents. And here's where you put it all side by side. And whoa, the difference is pretty stark, right? According to this analysis, Bitcoin mining brings in more than double the revenue of a battery on its best day and more than 4 times the revenue on an average day. And seeing it as a bar chart just makes it crystal clear. The author calculates a return on investment that's over 300% higher than batteries in a normal market. I mean, that's not just a little better, that is a massive difference in performance for the exact same amount of electricity. So, percentages are one thing, but what does this actually look like in the real world? What are we talking about in terms of actual dollars and cents left on the table? Well, get this. The article claims that if California had used Bitcoin mining for its curtailed energy in 2024, the state could have seen an additional $370 million in revenue. And if you thought that was a big number, hold on. For Texas, the analysis claims the potential is even more staggering. We're talking about this state's grid, ERCOT, leaving over $500 million on the table every single year. Now, here's the real kicker. The author points out that there's a joint document from these exact two grid operators, California and Texas, about making their grids more reliable. And even with these massive numbers staring them in the face, the report apparently focuses 100% on batteries, without a single mention of Bitcoin mining. Okay, so for this final section, let's pull the camera back, because the author doesn't just see this as some niche technical solution. They see it as part of a much bigger story about where we're headed. The article actually places this whole idea on the grand timeline of money itself. The argument is that we've evolved, right, from shells to gold to the paper money we use today, and now we're moving to a new, digital form of value, one that can be literally created directly from raw energy. And the author ends with this. This is such a provocative statement. The Kardashev scale, if you haven't heard of it, is a way to rank how advanced a civilization is by how much energy it can use. And the point here is powerful. Lithium-ion batteries are great for your phone, but they aren't the technology that's going to power a planet-spanning civilization. And that's really what this all boils down to. We've just walked through one author's very detailed case for a totally different way to manage our power grids. But if they're right, if we really can turn wasted clean energy directly into a new kind of digital value, what does that mean for the future? Not just for energy, but for money itself. It's a huge question to think about.